Hey, Decide Your Destiny crew, Carl Spyrides here. Thanks for joining me for this Decide Your Destiny conversation. Today, I've got Mark Bates in the hot seat. Say hey to the folks, Mark Bates.
Hey, what's going on, people?
Really, really stoked to be back on podcast and Mark Bates, as he's done in the Mark Bates project, holding himself accountable to his transformation and growth and his entrepreneurship. He's held me accountable and said, "Hey, what's the go for your podcast?" So, so after a bit of a hiatus, I'm now back on, courtesy of Mark Bates. So thank you, mate. Appreciate that.
Anytime.
And guys, I just want to first say Mark Bates was an absolute legend. He had my grandmother and me on podcast together. So I was at the time I was over in Sydney visiting my grandmother, and she was in a respite center, just recently moved in, and so I was spending a month there, just helping her acclimatize in and getting comfortable with the environment. And whilst I was there, I just mentioned it to her. I said, "Look, I've got to run home to do a podcast, but would you be cool to do a podcast with me?" And she was up for it. So then I asked Mark if he was up for it. And then that's how it happened. So thank you, mate. Thanks for making that memory.
Oh yeah, no, it was a fun. Diana's a really sweet lady.
Yeah, yeah. No, no, I appreciate that. And I guess to start off, I've got so many questions for you. I want to go into your grandfather, and obviously you've also had
Hmm.
grandparents kind of influence you in your life, like your grandparents influence you in your direction. But first, I mean, I'd love to kind of find out, where the Mark Bates project came from, like what kind of stimulated it, and what's the I guess we hear about it, your why.
Um, I guess it really started back in I'm going to say February of this year. I had a little bit of a mental break and put myself in hospital for a few days.
Yeah,
Now, while I was in there, I sort of had to skirt my responsibilities to a music artist who I've been working with. It was
yeah.
release day for a single of his,
Wow.
and it caused some disappointment with him. But I knew I was in the right place. I knew I had to take care of number one before I could take care of any number twos.
Yes.
And so anyway, that's where I kind of conceived it, and I do intend on sort of having my parent media company. I want to branch into YouTube as well,
Yeah.
and just a little tribute to where I came up with it. The name of the company I chose is Rubber Room Media. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, just to remind me of where I've been, and
Yeah. Yeah.
so. But through the work I was doing with musicians, I acquired a lot of knowledge and skills in the new music industry, and I realized that there are a lot of skills there
Yep.
for people. If you have a hobby, if you have a passion, if you have an interest, if you have an area of expertise, you hold value, you hold knowledge, you have something that someone else wants.
Yeah.
Um, so with content creation, I feel like any one of us can get out there and I mean, if you want to put the work into it, you can earn an income off of the things you're passionate about. And I mean, I'm a firm believer that we work to live, not live to work. And so many of us are stuck in low wage, um, laborious jobs that are not rewarding. And I think that there's ways for any one of us to, if not support ourselves, at least supplement our income in a way that is really fulfilling to us. And where content creation has really caught my interest, and I see the effect it has in helping artists, musicians, a number of different creatives kind of progress
Yeah.
and actually start getting paid their due for the craft, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Overdue.
definitely, definitely, and so that's I guess number one, the reason I started the Mark Bates project, because I wanted to sort of walk my talk and strike out on something I'm passionate about.
Yes.
So the Mark Bates Project was born. Now, I mean, that's step one in content creation. You have to pick your niche, you have to pick your audience, who are you trying to speak to. Now, another area that has always interested me, entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
which ties in hand with creatives now being able to earn some income on their interests.
Yes.
So, where I was at a point in my life, I just had a little mental load throughout the pandemic.
Yeah.
I've had a lifelong struggle with drug and alcohol,
Hmm.
and for a short time during the pandemic, that kind of nipped me in the ass again, and I was in a dark spot.
Yeah.
And addiction is such a cycle that I don't know what it was, but this time around, I just knew that if I didn't work on me, like
Yeah.
I had tried everything from 12-step programs to rehab to
Oh, wow.
meditation to this, that, and the other thing, but trying things is not doing the inner work that's required, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And what works for one doesn't work for the other.
100%, 100%. And that's not to talk down on any particular rehabs or 12-step programs. If it works for you, I do it. Um, but I knew for me, if I didn't work on myself, that the things that would take me to the point of self-medication were going to keep arising,
Yeah.
that cycle was never going to end.
Yeah.
So um, I like to tie in with the fact that I'm talking to people who are now doing things uh, that they're passionate about and are able to support themselves and lead a more fulfilling life. Um, the personal development, professional development that's required. I mean, I'm brand new striking out on podcasting, so
Yes.
it's a journey for everyone else with me, right? And that's why I say it's a way for me to hold myself accountable.
Yeah.
I have an audience that expects that biweekly podcast now. I have people I've interviewed that I owe it to them to edit that interview and get it out there.
Yeah. So there's God, there's so much to unpack there. I think there's a few points that my mind just kind of navigates through. One of them is repeat cycles of behavior that
Mhm.
are maybe low self-esteem and that we all have, and like, thank you for sharing, by the way. Firstly, thank you for sharing.
Oh,
Um,
100%.
and I appreciate, us, you sharing, and we're holding a safe space and everyone listening, I think everyone has gone through a repeat cycle of behavior at whatever extent, at whatever point in their life where they've kind of I don't know, you kind of cross your soul, or you're doing like you're doing something. Oh, like I've done it. That this is a low self-esteem event that I'm taking place in, and I'm choosing to take
Right.
place in, and you're right. Like some of those programs might not work because you're trying to uncover. Well, why am I taking part in this? Like I know. Yep, I do this. I get that high. I get that. But then the low comes. I know the low is much worse than and then so
Right.
from what I'm understanding, firstly, for people out there, I guess I got a couple questions. Um, I guess what are some of your secrets in terms of breaking that cycle of habit? Two, maybe I'm answering the question, but is it to kind of find a high that is more inner work, fulfilling, that kind of lasts a bit longer? Or, like something that's maybe creative? Is that kind of the
Um,
solution?
no, well, it doesn't hurt. It helps. Um, but the root of 98% of don't quote me on the number,
Yeah.
but most addiction is rooted in trauma.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, I mean, there's that whole other side of things. And things don't change if things don't change.
Yep.
If you're one of these people that say, "Oh, therapy's bullshit," well, I wish you luck, but um, if things don't change, things don't change.
Yep.
And these are professionals that can help you change things,
Yes. Yeah. And so that's
right?
and that's what's helped you.
Partially,
Yeah.
partially.
Yeah.
Um, Now, when you were on my show, we spoke about sort of ridding yourself of the negativity in your circle, and
Yeah.
that's a big part of it too,
Yeah.
because vibrations can hold you down and hold you back,
Yep.
right? If you're in a bad place already,
Yes.
those the vibrations of a bunch of people who don't have your best interests at heart are not going to improve your situation.
Yep.
So you need to remove yourself from that bad vibration, right?
Well, we're a combination of our environment in like so many ways, aren't we? Like
Yes, we
our
are.
daily environment, what we see, where we, so something as simple as I was doing a shoot yesterday, and for the video light was beaming in on the roof, and at
Hmm.
first, everyone there were four ladies in reception, and I was in this law firm, and they all went, "Oh my God, that's so bright." And then when we turned it off to leave, they were like, "Oh man, I wish that you could leave that light here. That's so." And we're saying how every time we go anywhere with like in an office building, when you put the lights on, when you go to leave, everyone says that they're like, "Oh God, I missed that light. I missed that light."
Right.
And something as simple as having light in a room ch changes your environment. Having like you look at architecture and design, it's another thing. It's like, and then you're talking about people, like the people that
Hmm.
are around you. Like you said, that vibration, that energy is either going to hold you down, or I guess lure you back into that world,
Right.
um, or challenge you to like face yourself.
Yes. Yes. Because if you don't face yourself and get to know yourself, do you know what? If you, I don't even know what to say about that. If you get to know yourself and that's how you want to live, power to you.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've met a person that likes to stay down.
No.
Um, I've met a lot of people who feel like they're stuck down,
Yeah. Yeah.
but no one that wants to be there.
And why do you think that is? Why do you think that like where that feeling of stuck comes from? Like you reckon it's the link to the trauma. It's the like this is the
Yeah,
only way.
yeah, and then there's like most addicts are dual diagnosis too and have some form of mental illness, and a lot of addicts have PTSD,
Yes.
generalized anxiety disorder,
Yeah.
and depression,
Yeah.
and these are diseases that there's a voice in your head that is only telling you all the reasons why you can't escape your situation
Yeah.
and how hopeless that situation is, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I like to say too that therapy and you know what, none of us wants to put chemicals in our body, but if there's a chemical there that helps you correct an issue, improve your life so that you don't need that medication anymore, do it. Why the hell wouldn't you?
It's like you're trying to climb out of that pit, isn't it? You're
Yes.
trying to climb out of the pit. And would you say, I guess, in the creative world, I mean, so you said you work with artists, that sort of, like, well, I can't escape, the mind, I guess, working against you. Would you say
Hmm.
that maybe in the creators, the artist world, is that also like the imposter syndrome sort of, it's kind of like the same speaker, the same sort of mind,
No,
or it's
no,
different?
no. It's a lot more serious. I feel like most of us can suppress that voice that's associated with imposter syndrome.
Yep.
Depression is a whole other animal.
You can't suppress that voice.
No, well, sometimes you can't, um,
Yeah.
and it's very easy to feel stuck.
Yeah.
And
I know what you mean. Yeah.
yeah, it's a big time waster. It's a miserable existence.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean,
I mean,
Yeah,
that's a
I
good reason to
mean,
get out of it.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
right there.
yeah.
It is. It's a time
So I mean,
waster,
I've
a miserable existence. Yep.
yeah,
And
but
it's
I mean, we
painful, painful.
100%. We've talked about the cycle.
Yeah.
Um, it was a long, long time before I found myself at that point in the cycle that I did during the pandemic,
Yeah.
and
And that was the
it
pressures
wasn't a.
of the pandemic. Like that was the pressures of like,
Do you know what? I think it was a combination of things. It was a combination of kind of lacking in my therapy.
yep.
Um, I was stuck inside, no social interaction. Yeah, I think it was a big combination of things, and like the cases of mental illness went through the roof during the pandemic. We're
Yeah.
social animals. We need each
Yeah.
other, right?
Yeah. And I think even post, I think it was such a intense period and like such a microscope focused on it. But and then up like everything sort of and it's like, but anytime you mess with a society or you change the structures of society or you change, hey, look, now we're going to try this economical system or this thing or this way of socially operating,
Hmm.
um, the effects, like whether it's people your age, my like or the kids, the next generation, it's like kids at school, that had
Yeah.
to look at other kids with like masks on all the time,
Hmm.
and then build that kind of fear and then like and that anxiety. Like I just think of like the fear and anxiety I had as a teenager. And like you talk about depression, like I know like the sort of anxiety and the like how much that kind of literally like swallowed you up in your throat and everything. And then that daily fear and anxiety. I mean, I was watching news the first few days of the announcement, and I started developing that like fear and anxiety, and I was like, and that depression, and I was like, gosh, I haven't felt this for a little while, for quite a while, and all of a sudden, I'm just watching 24/7 news about this new scourge on humanity that's going to wipe us all
Yeah.
out, and then I just turned it off and walked outside, and I saw more people than ever walking around, more people than ever walking their dogs. I was like, where did all these dogs come from? Like,
Right.
were they all stuck in houses before this pandemic, and now people are like,
Yeah.
I need to get the heck out. And finally, the
Yeah.
dog's like, this is my time to shine. I'm free. I don't know what it was, but it was just,
And it was unfortunate. It was unfortunate. It was like hit after hit too,
yeah,
because not only was that initial anxiety of lockdown, we also had to witness an intense division between everybody we knew.
yeah, yeah. That was I mean, for me, looking at leadership across the planet, I think that was the biggest disappointment. Like, I don't know how to say this culturally correct, but it just like, instead of divide and conquer, like divide and then state your point, and then like it was just, yeah, like it split. You're right, it split people apart, and
Hmm.
people started treating people differently. And like people would treat people differently, and they've got no idea what their medical background is, what their situation
Yep.
is, with where they got autoimmune. They got no idea about their background. And
Nope.
suddenly they were like, no, you're a piece of dirt, and I
Yeah.
was just like, my God, like I think one of the biggest challenges I had with it all was like my misconception of how we would treat each other, and then like how we treated each other if we were told this group over here. And then I just saw everything. Then I was like, oh wow, okay, I see how World War happened. I see how Hitler happened. I see how Stalin. I see
Yeah.
how communism. I see all these different things. I see how all these things came about. Like
Yeah.
very easy to pit groups of people against each other and get them to do all the work.
Yes.
Like I couldn't believe it how divisive. And then people were like, like so. It was kind of like that. I didn't fully watch it, but there was the you know the kind of the AIDS when AIDS became well known and people like were still
Hmm.
unsure whether it was blood and whether you touch people. And I can't remember, it was basketball, and it was a basketball
Right.
player and a coach, and the coach was like hugging the player and saying, "Look, I'm not not fearful. Like I've got I know what I know, and this player is not going to infect me or whatever it is." Like, and it was that sort of
Right.
that sort of thing where the humans kind of just turn on each other. It was scary, man. It's scary to
Yeah.
watch.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
Very.
that's a good
Very.
point that you bring
Yeah,
up
and you're
because
right. You're right. And it was so easy for, I guess, the flip sides of the coin in the media to exploit it
yeah,
and divide people.
clickbait.
It was
Like
sad to watch and almost diminished my faith in humanity a little bit.
yeah, right towards the end, a bit of string.
Yeah.
Yeah. But see, mate, like, and this is why I think the one great silver lining out of it was podcasting, because I mean, I used to, like, my grandparents watch news, and they watch it all. They watch, like, oh, we got to, we'll turn on the news. But back in their day, I think there was a lot more trust. Maybe there was a lot more, like, communal focus on, okay, let's establish the groundworks of this nation. Let's try and, the
Right.
infrastructure. Let's build to this common goal. Let's have some roads that we can all drive on and share and all be a part of. And so, like, there was a lot more trust, a lot more faith, a lot more pride in, like, your nation, um, and
Yes.
you turn on the news to find out about the rest of the world, because you had no one had the internet, no one had, they couldn't go, they didn't have, like, people they can call, hey, what's going on in your part of the world? How's it going over there? And I think that's so that's what we're used to. But I started watching, like, I'd watch the nightly, like, I'd watch the segment, and I don't know what it is in, like, other parts of the world, but I found it very. The psychologist explained it to me, and he was saying how, because I saw this sort of pattern, and it was like, shock story, so, like, bang, shock, terrifying story, um, less terrifying story,
Hmm.
miracle cure, and then we'll finish with sports. And then a psychologist was explaining
Right.
that if you go to work all day and you're having a mundane sort of day, and then you're just kind of, there's no serious ups and downs, and then you come home, and then you get that sort of emotional, like, drug, that emotional fix. You're like, oh my God, I've had my emotions go all the way up to extreme, apathy, scare, like, and then
Hmm.
hope, like, like, comes back down, and then it finishes with sport, like, there's a miracle cure. Oh my God, this tragic thing. So your emotions get this ping, that you haven't had for the
Yes.
retirement of the day. And then I was like, wow, like, in terms of marketing and sales, I was like, that's actually very interesting, to see. And like, when I learned about that, I could
Yeah.
kind of see it a little bit more, and then just go. And I'm not going, oh, it's all bad. And there's, like, I think there is definitely lots of positive news, but positive news doesn't travel as well as, negative news, unfortunately. Like,
Hmm.
there's this great,
Right.
like, in Perth where I live, it's so funny. Like, if there's an accident, like, people just turn their heads and they just, like, drive slowly, and that sort of thing. But if
Yeah.
someone's getting, like, christened, or, like, having a birthday party, or married on the other side, it's like, oh yeah, yeah, whatever. Like, it's
Yeah.
that negative, like, that
Yeah.
kind of that chaos, and that balance of chaos.
Yes.
And I can't remember who spoke about it in a book. I think it was, I'm trying to remember the name. But they were talking about, like, if you gave human beings, um, like, everything, like, like, we lived in, like, this pristine world where everything and anything was just perfect. There was no problems at all. Like, the first thing that we would do would be start smashing things apart and trying to, like, like, see something different. It's like the human
Right.
experience, you know. It's
Yes.
it's interesting, but I love what you spoke about, because it wasn't just the lockdown or just the first thing. It was the social impacts. and then the divide, and then and for me, it felt very intense. It constantly intensified. But I mean, the point that I was that I did a long long loop to was podcasting was such a beautiful silver lining
Hmm.
because you could have conversations with people. It wasn't that 5 minute segment or
Yes.
that 30-second segment where shock horror, shock horror. It was like, let's have a conversation over this topic. Um, and I felt like, oh, there's human connection, interaction. Where if I go on a news blog, they say this person's, is the worst in the world. Don't look at anything that they do. This person's terrible. This person's horrible. And I was like, oh my God, like everybody's the worst. Where you go on a podcast and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
let me listen to what they're thinking. Let them explain their point rather than just grab a soundbite, you know?
Yeah. I don't know if good news doesn't sell advertising or what.
Yeah, yeah. It's it's true. I think it's just that I think it's part of me goes like, come on, we got to do it in a different way, and then part of me also goes, well, then as humanity, we got to change. It's like that whole thing, like vote with your dollar, like like you got to kind of change. Well, then why don't we
Right.
like start buying into a consciousness of a positive, prosperity focused for all, future. Um, but I
And
think,
and you know what? I think that is happening.
yeah,
I think that is happening, Kyle. Like I really feel there is a global paradigm shift happening.
yep,
I think people are starting to realize that if we don't help each other, we're screwed.
yeah.
And I think people realize that there's power in numbers. The more we work together, the more we're going to accomplish.
Exactly. Exactly. I think collaboration's the new sort of the way we do things, like,
Yes.
and I'm seeing it so much, like, oh, like, because we've got the technology now, we've got the tools, we've got the ability, we've got the understanding. Okay, let's do some podcasting, some YouTube, let's do some, video, photo. How do we like, and I think collaborating with each other, we realize, okay,
Hmm.
I want to get to my Mount Everest. There's a freaking long way to go. I'm going to need some help up there, Oh, well, why don't I help you and then you help me and then
Right.
we help each other. I think, yeah, I think it's the way
Exactly.
of the future.
Exactly. I think we spoke. I think about that too on my show. That about that eventually you're not bouncing an event off of uh, a negative vibe. You're
Yeah.
bouncing it off of like-minded people and positive people and people who will encourage rather than people who will help you do instead of tell you why you can't.
Yeah. Yeah. And you kind of naturally are changing your shift in the culture because it's like, if you're in a schoolyard and, kids playing with, say a kid's going mental and breaking toys and things like that. And then, everyone's going crazy. And
Hmm.
then one kid goes over and has a look at this little butterfly with this, little, like little magnifying glass, and then, or starts creating something. And then the other kids start getting curious. And then that chaotic breaking everything apart, energy starts slowing down and they start going, okay, what's that kid looking at? What is that kid looking at? And then slowly you're kind of leading. I guess that's the true, you're leading by example. And people are
Hmm.
interested in that other way of doing things, maybe I don't have to
And
exist with so much hate and and divide
well,
and
and here lies why I'm a firm believer that mindfulness is something that needs to be talked about in school.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. I think there's so much that needs to be talked about at school. That
Yeah.
is there's
Yeah.
a whole curriculum. Would you, so if you had kids, do you think you'd send them to school or you'd homeschool them? Like if like right now as schools
Well,
are.
I do have a child. Her name's
Oh,
Rylan.
okay. Thank you. Thank you.
16 years old.
Oh,
Six,
wow.
16 in November. Yeah, yeah.
Brilliant.
Um,
Happy
and
birthday coming up.
it's yeah, yeah. So I mean, it really is a different world for kids these days than it was for us. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's but you know
Different
what?
challenges.
Yeah, 100%. And we'd all like to help our children more than we're able to, but it comes down to, as parents, we're there for the best advice our child could possibly hear.
Mm.
And then we're left to watch them make their own decisions,
Yeah.
right? It's a hard pill to swallow, but it's a great lesson in, I guess, letting go of the things you have no control over.
And is that letting go?
But if
Sorry, keep going.
Oh, sorry. So, I mean, that comes down to providing the right environment and
Yep.
exposing your child to healthy, positive things,
Yes.
um, and nurturing the things that bring your child enjoyment.
Yeah. And is that letting go, is that part of your mindfulness sort of approach? Like, I guess maybe like what are some of the key things in your that you've found through your mindfulness that have helped you, your approach to mindfulness? I mean, because everyone's got different sort of, I guess, different sort of ways. It's kind of like, asking someone, I guess, maybe, you know,
Yeah. So with anxiety being a something that affects me all the time, it's not always to the point where it needs to be medicated, but it's something where I've had to learn coping mechanisms.
yeah,
And staying in the moment is very important in that, and being mindful that anxiety is basically caused by something that hasn't happened yet. Anxiety is worry about the future.
yes.
It
Sorry,
hasn't
just cut
happened
out
yet.
there.
So, oh yeah, so it's something that hasn't happened yet. So I mean, you really have to sit, get yourself together for a minute, and
Yep.
analyze whether or not it's something you have any control over.
Yeah.
If you have control over it and it causes you anxiety, then do what you can to change it.
Yeah.
If you have no control over it, there's no point in actions because it's not going to change.
Yeah. And so that letting go philosophy is a big part of it, part of your mindfulness, and I guess that's something that you kind of have to judge, for yourself. Do you use like do you like read a lot? Do you have like ancient like do you like? I mean, I love Stoicism. Do you look at Stoicism? I mean, obviously,
I do. I've been really into Ryan Holiday lately.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He's good at dissecting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, for sure. I'm on my second time around on that three book set. He did The Obstacles Away, Stillness is the Key, and Ego is the Enemy.
yes, yes,
Yeah, all three of them are excellent books.
yeah. I've read The
Yeah, and
Obstacles
and
Away. Yeah, it's a good one.
oh, okay, yeah, no, and they've all helped me a lot.
Awesome.
Especially Ego is the Enemy.
Yeah,
I think it should be not required, but highly recommended reading for any young man to read Ego is the Enemy.
yep. What was the
It'll
biggest takeaway out
put
of that one,
um
or the biggest lesson? I mean, I get the title, but
just how much it just showed me how much we get in our own way
yeah, oh, yeah,
with pride and just
so true.
right.
Yeah, I think so much of it is getting out of our own way. Like so much of our
Hmm.
like so much of our ability to grow, ability to change, ability to finish a project, create is getting out of our own way. Like I feel like we have so many as a kid, you look at a kid, like a kid is just a child's like unstoppable, and it's like our brain gets in our own way. Our brain gets bigger and it gets in our own way. Like a kid has that ability just to go for it, to get bumped down, pick himself back up, to be bold and yeah, like maybe a kid can be a bit tactless or different sort of things, but
Hmm.
you can kind of you understand. You're like, oh no, he's meaning that because he wants that, or he's he's saying this because he's excited, or you know what I mean? Like it's clear.
Right.
It's not deceptive. Like it's just, you know, tactless because he's
Yeah.
very passionate. So there's so much, like if
And
you look at a kid's not spending half his day or half his time getting in his own way. And I feel like us as adults, like I know, I think we can all spend so much time getting out in our own way.
we can, and that's why I think things like mindfulness and meditation should be taught in school, and I think it should be taught early because a child's mind, they're still rapidly developing brand new neural pathways. Where
Yeah.
we as adults, that's slowed right down,
Mm.
and I mean that I think that's part of where the saying comes from, stuck in their ways, because it's a lot more difficult for an adult to change habits and start forming new neural pathways and
Yeah.
thinking, I guess changing your mindset basically.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, like, look, this is my what really has worked for me over my time. Where I mean, when I was 14, I had like serious. I didn't know what way I was going to go, you know, and I could have easily
Hmm.
just said, you know, look, I'm done with it, you know, like I'm out. Like this ain't making sense anymore. This is just this pain and trauma and this you know abuse all the time is just it's not yeah, like I'm done here. And
Yeah.
one thing that helped me was I had I had one goal, and I was like, I want to play for the Springboks. You know, I want to play for the Springboks rugby team. And part of that goal was definitely like, you know, my own satisfaction. I want to be a rugby player. I want to be able to, you know, achieve this and you know get the
Hmm.
acclaim. The other part of it was like, well, man, like what if I inspired other kids, you know, to go and like do that? Like, so what, you know, like what could I be giving back? You know, so that was another part. I don't know where that came from, but it was like, oh, what if I can inspire kids like my age, you know, who wanted to quit, you know, at the age of 14. And then the other part of that was that I think what helped me out of that kind of mental crisis was um, I just every day I was exercising. I was doing weights, running, whatever. And it was all for end target, you know, like, and so like I find like moving and
Right.
exercising is so beneficial. And to relate this back to like what we're talking about kids and what's taught at school, I remember my grandfather saying, you know, like I think he left school pretty early, but he was saying how he would because I was asking them questions, my grandparents, and I had a range of questions, and I asked, you know, my grandmother, what was your favorite class, you know, like class that you enjoyed, and then for my grandfather, I said, you know, and he said, what did he say? He said holidays or something, or school, or some sort of break, you know, and he said anytime there was like work to be done in the garden or work to be done outside of the room, he would put his hand up. And then I got a video footage of him, and he just says, he's like, it's just madness to keep a kid in a class, you know, for 8 hours of the day. Like, he's like, it was just madness. And then I remembered
Hmm.
a school watching this video, and it was like how some schools are run in the Nordic countries. You know,
Right.
like, and it was saying how they let the kids jump up trees, you know, play in
Yeah.
the bushes, you know, like at lunchtime, like get out and bloody engage with
Right.
life, you know. And then you
Yes.
look at the school system, and you look like I did a bit more research into it, and then you look at the common school era, and what it was really for was for that industrial age, you know, okay, after school, your job is most likely going to be in a factory. You know, you're going to be either
Right.
building this nation, or building weapons to fight this war that's coming up. You know, and so it was like
Hmm.
you see in the like you look at that, and then you look at the factory, like put your hand up if you need to go to the toilet. You know, single rows, like all those sorts of things was built for that, and like, you know, I understand like that was that part of our history. But then it's like, how are we changing? Like, what are we evolving? You know, like how are we shifting it? Because
Yes.
it's a different world, you know,
Well, and
and different
it is
challenges.
happening slowly.
Yeah.
It is happening slowly, and there are some pilot programs that have been running long enough now where the benefits of student-led learning over a rigid curriculum
Yeah.
is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Like the benefits to these children is amazing.
Yep.
They're not seeing the rates of ADHD and behavioral issues that they do in public school where they have a rigid curriculum,
Yeah.
because the students are actually they actually have a say in what they're learning. I'm not saying they have free range, but I'm sure they're given a range of things that they can choose from. And where it's student led, they're engaged. They're learning about something that
Yes.
interests them.
Yeah. And that's the key word. They're engaged, like interacting, you know. What um
Hmm.
what are some, I guess, what are some of the personal activities that you've done that have like, like, so I guess I shared, like that exercise and having that one goal, like just for me, like my mind, and then bringing me out of that kind of like, that dark pit. Um, like what are some
Hmm.
of the hobbies or things that you like to do that maybe like also helped you out of there?
Well, I'm uh, just been eating up as much information as I can. I'm podcasting and YouTubing and content
Awesome.
creation,
Yeah.
repurposing content. Like I've taken a real serious interest in it.
Yes.
Um, as much as I've been lacking on it lately, daily physical activity is very important for me, and staying in the right frame of mind.
Yes.
Um, Also diet. It's funny once you start becoming healthier, how you can physically feel what the changes in diet are doing for you.
Yeah.
Um, so I try to eat as healthy as I can.
Yes.
Some of the other hobbies, geez, I
I know you like to get out
sailing.
into the wild a bit though. Uh,
I
right.
do. I do. I
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
camping. I
Yeah.
love camping. Sailing, which I haven't been
Oh,
able to do
cool.
for the past couple of years. I grew up on the east coast of Canada, in Nova Scotia,
Yes.
so grew up sailing.
Yeah.
And now I live in Alberta, and there's not an ocean within 1,500 kilometers.
Wow.
So, but there is a spot in Calgary where you can rent small sailboats, and that's what I was doing for a couple of years. But throughout the pandemic, I wasn't able to do that. So
Yes.
I'm excited next spring to get back out on the water. I do a lot of swimming.
Awesome.
Yeah, basically just trying to stay active.
Yeah.
I
Any
find if
sports? Like, do you have any favorite sports in Canada? Hockey?
yeah, so I'm not. I
Okay.
won't say I'm not a hockey fan. I'm not a hockey nut by any means.
Yeah.
Um, but it was one of those things where when I was a kid, Dad wanted me and my brothers to play hockey. I had a
Yeah.
I had a paper route, so in the winter time I had to get out and deliver my papers before
Wow.
the 7 or 8 a.m. hockey practice.
Wow.
And by that time, my toes would be frozen.
Jeez.
I was an ankle skater and not too good with a stick to begin with, so hockey just wasn't an enjoyable experience for me.
No.
Um, but I did
Looks
end up
dangerous,
getting
man.
into
Looks dangerous.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And when you're skating on your ankles, it's just not a good place to be.
No.
So, but later on in life, I get into some competitive curling,
Okay.
um, sailing, and then got pretty heavy into the martial arts for a few
Oh,
years.
cool.
So trained for a lot of years in Taekwondo, and
Okay.
then for a few years in Dutch Muay Thai.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's actually something I've been meaning to get back into. My girlfriend and I recently moved to a new town, and there does happen to be a Muay Thai school here, so I do have to get in there and check that out.
Awesome. Awesome. What's the name of the new town?
Olds, Alberta. I'm actually just 10 minutes north of Disbury, where I've been for the past 8 years, 8 or 9 years.
Nice. And is it like a nice, like small community, or is it like still
Yeah,
close to the?
yeah, no, very nice communities. We're pretty much smack in the middle of the cities of Calgary and Red Deer, Alberta.
Okay.
Olds, the town we moved to, I think they're population's around 10,000. I think they're
Oh,
getting pretty
cool.
close to city status.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's funny. It was kind of culture shock to me. I grew up in Halifax, which is a city of a couple 100,000.
Okay.
Moved to Calgary for 10 years, which is a city of one point something million. And
Yep.
then I kind of moved north of Calgary to a rural area, and I even though I grew up a city boy, I don't know if I could move back. I kind of like
Yeah.
the quiet of the rural area. Yeah.
Well, I mean that pays to mindfulness, pays to I guess that kind of yeah, being with nature. You know, when you've got a beautiful
Yeah.
environment around you, you know,
Right.
it's like why like you're saying, like you've got all that beautiful landscape around you, and you know, you're hiking and you're camping and like the things you can do. It's like it kind of begs for you to go and explore it, right?
Yes. Yes. And I mean, people often ask. I mean, well, you're from the East Coast and you're growing up pretty much in the prairies. What do you like better? And I like them the same but different. The East has the ocean, the West has the mountains. I mean,
Yes.
it is when you have either or, it's what you make of it.
Yeah.
Go explore it. Go play with it.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. You can find your place anywhere, you know.
That's
There's
right.
there's places that are a bit more conducive, definitely to the environment. But I'd love to ask you a question about uh, so your grandfather, because obviously, uh,
Hmm.
in terms of sailing, did you do quite a bit of that with your grandfather?
I did. He had I think it was about a 40 footer.
Okay,
It's called an Acadian yawl. It was a two-mast sailboat, similar to a schooner.
okay.
Beautiful boat. Yeah,
Did
yeah.
you say schooner?
Yeah, very similar to a schooner.
In Australia, we call a schooner is a glass of beer.
Oh, well, actually, they are here as well, but
Oh,
it's a
okay,
style of
okay.
sail.
All right. There we go.
If you Google about the Blue Nose, it was the fastest sailboat ever built.
Okay,
It was built in Lunenburg, Nova Scotia,
okay,
um, or Lunenburg or Mahone Bay, Lunenburg, I believe. But that's a schooner.
okay.
It's actually on the Canadian dime.
All right. Okay. Cool. Cool.
Yeah,
Awesome.
so grew up sailing with him, and then my brothers and I took sailing lessons in Halifax, and that's how we spent our summers. So yeah, grew up doing a lot of sailing.
Awesome.
But yeah, I guess it would have been Grandpa that originally got us all into it.
Yeah. And I know you got a special, I guess, story that that we kind of touched on a little bit before the show about your grandfather.
Yeah, yeah. So when you were on with me, the story about how Clivey's statement of decide your destiny kind of ended up inspiring your book. Um, what happened with my grandfather and I, the experience actually inspired me a lot, and keeps me inspired to keep doing what I'm doing. Um, it was a little bit different in that Clivey was telling you to decide your destiny. So I mean, what happened was my grandfather ended up passing away from lung cancer and emphysema from years of smoking.
What was your
And
grandfather's name, by the way?
Bill Harris.
Bill Harris. Bill Harris. Okay.
Yep.
Beautiful.
Yeah, an amazing man. And so he was in palliative care, and I was 14 or 15, I believe.
Yeah.
And the family gets called down, and we're told Grandpa's probably not going to make it through the night.
Oh,
So mom comes out and she says, "Mark, it's your turn to, go in, say what you have to say, your last words to your grandfather. The doctors, we don't know if he can hear you. There's no brain activity, but go in and say what you have to say."
wow.
So I walked in the room, and Grandpa's laid out, and of course in an induced coma, and heaving off the bed. He's struggling so bad to get a breath. He's that close. And
Yeah.
I grabbed him by the hand and I said, "Grandpa, it's Mark." And he sat bolt upright in that bed, squeezed my hand and stared into my eyes. And it was a it was a I guess a telepathic conversation with me and my grandfather, and it was a scalding I got.
Wow.
He did in well, not so many words. He told me, "Quit fucking up, Mark. You're starting to go down the wrong path."
Wow.
Um, but at the same time, the look of care and compassion and concern in his eyes
Yeah.
when we were locked in that gaze was that was who my grandfather was. But I knew the message behind those eyes, and
Yeah.
it was stern advice.
Yeah.
And I didn't heed that advice for a lot of years. Um, and in hindsight, it's definitely advice that should have been followed. But it's something that keeps me inspired and keeps me on what I think is the right path. It assists me in keeping myself accountable.
Thank
Just
you so
knowing
much for sharing that,
that I
man.
think I'm doing him that I think I'm doing him proud, and
You are.
my birthday just passed in July on July 5th, and I actually called my mom or I texted mom to tell her this, but I was working away building picnic tables actually, and
Nice.
it was my birthday, July 5th, and out of nowhere, the song "Sailing" came on the radio, which was my grandfather's funeral song. So I
Wow.
had to text mom and I said, you know what, Grandpa Bill shot me a happy birthday today.
Yeah, 100%. Oh man, holy moly. That is a that's like I'm getting goosebumps. That is a and it takes a while to heed the message though. For me, it was the same thing. It takes a while to heed the message, you know. But
Hmm.
you're so right. You can see the compassion and care. There's obviously the words that are communicated, but then there's something else that's communicated, like you said, with the expression.
Yes.
Wow, man, that is a powerful story.
It was the most spiritual experience of my life, hands down.
I mean, I was visualizing.
I'm
I'm
not,
very
I'm
visual.
not,
I was visualizing it.
and, I'm not even sure I've shared this story with my mother,
Oh wow. Oh
but yeah, it's definitely something that'll be with me forever.
yeah. And I think we all need we need those sort of it's kind of like a lighthouse, you know. It's like that lighthouse, that story, that or that person is like that lighthouse in the middle of the ocean. You know, when the seas get rough, when we get swayed off course, when we're not sure about certain things, when we're heading astray. Um, and it's very easy. Like it's very, I mean, in today's world, it's so easy to get tempted. Like it's so easy. I often think of kids like going through school now, and it's like God, there's so much distraction and information, and it's the balance. You know, there's so much potential and opportunity, and you can be like geniuses and entrepreneurs at like the age of 14, and you can have so many
Hmm.
solutions that we didn't have when we were growing up. It's remarkable. It's so inspiring. And then on the other side of that, there's the extremes. Um,
Yes.
and you sometimes you need that lighthouse, like your grandfather or the person or that moment that's so special to you, and that no one can it's like no one can touch that. No one can affect that moment, and it's held in your soul. I truly believe that.
Yes. Yes. And you're right
Wow.
about distraction. And I mean that as much that's one of the pitfalls of the internet, I guess, is
Yeah.
just. But that's also why I've taken an interest in Stoicism lately,
Yeah.
because I think too many of us are not exercising our responsibility
Mm.
to analyze and fact check the information that we are
Yeah.
receiving.
True. True. And what happens is we're all in these echo chambers of realities. Like we're all, and you come together at a dinner or like a table, and it's like,
Right.
this person thinks you're this, that person thinks you're that, this person, where I just remember growing up. It's so crazy. I remember growing up, and you could. share your opinions and your thoughts and your beliefs, and then they would change over time. And then,
Yes.
like someone might go, Carl, I don't think you're right there. And then like me and my friend, we would debate, we would go to school every
Hmm.
day. We'd pretty much be in a debate all day, but it was good. It was healthy,
Yes.
you know?
And it was your friend, and that was that dynamic. But
Yeah.
now all of a sudden, there's immediate response
Yeah.
from an unlimited number of people you don't know
Yeah.
in different parts of the world with different cultures and different political concerns and beliefs. It's yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's,
You've really gotta do your own research.
yeah, you do. You've got to do your own research. And I think if we can progress, we can progress in a way where we're a bit more interested in the person and what they're saying rather than straight, let me stick a label on them. Like that sort of shit that I've seen in the last few years has got to
Hmm.
change. Like
Yes.
bang, you'll label this, you'll label that, you know, governor, prime minister, local politician, media tells me to label you this. So as soon as you say that, I got to put a sticker on you. Like, what
Right.
the hell happened to human connection and
Right. But
interaction?
I think we're also at a weird spot right now too, where like I said, I believe there is a global paradigm shift happening, but that's not an overnight thing. Like that's a generational, probably a couple 100-year thing.
Yep.
That attitudes will change over time, right?
Yes.
Um, and I think that unfortunately, for a lot of areas of life and a lot of different things, that things are going to get worse before they get better.
Mm.
But I think there are necessary growing pains that
It's part of change.
humanity has to go through to come to some realizations.
Yeah. It's like that moment with your grandfather, like that
Hmm.
kind of that impact of change.
Yes.
So sometimes you need that jolt, you know.
Yeah.
The best times of my change.
Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan, I think it was. His a quote from his time in office always makes me chuckle, but rings so true that, and I can't quote him word for word, but something about maybe it'll take a threat from out of this world to finally unite us all,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
It's true. Yeah. It's so true, isn't it? It's that kind of motivation and that jolt.
Yeah,
Well, thank you so much, for sharing that story, man. I really appreciate,
of
you
course.
sharing that story and sharing your experiences and, what has kind of helped you through and kind of the path that you're on and the awesome, creation and that kind of inspiration moment you're in of just learning, sucking up information and then tearing things apart and building things, which I love that part of personal growth. I guess the final question I wanted to ask you before we find out where the audience can follow you is what does deciding your destiny mean to you?
To me, deciding your destiny means taking the steps to living a fulfilling life and fulfilling your definition of fulfilling. Ask yourself what is your definition of success,
Yeah.
right? And then start making goals to get yourself there. And that to me is deciding your destiny.
Yeah.
If you're not deciding to make use of what is now available to all of us, um, to improve your life and live a more fulfilling existence and to help your fellow man, um, you need to educate yourself because there are ways to improve your life. Um, it's baby steps, and but every baby step is immense
Yeah.
improvement.
Yeah. 100%. I feel that. I feel that. Oh man, I mean, we could keep talking. I've really enjoyed this, and I think we're going to be creating things together for a while for sure.
Definitely.
Um, just a pity we're so far apart.
Ah,
It could zip over and yeah,
someday.
have a schooner.
That's right.
Yeah. Mate, where can the audience find out more about you and kind of follow your journey and yeah, learn a bit more?
Well, you can find me at the Mark Bates Project on Facebook, and also at www.themarkbatesproject.com.
Beauty. Awesome. Well, guys, you've heard it here first. You know where to follow Mark Bates, and I hope you really enjoyed this. I think we dug into some sort of some deep topics there, and some things that kind of we all deal with, those challenge, those loops of habitual things that we're trying to evolve from. And also, I think this paradigm shift, exciting, but also being aware that there's going to be a lot of change, and how can we be a part of the positive change, I think is a big obligation we all have. So
that's the key.
Yeah. And again, thank you so much, Mark. Really appreciate you. And
I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, mate, thank you for getting me back on my own podcast to have you on.
Hey, I'm glad I inspired you.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Holding me accountable. I love it. I love that. Awesome, guys. Well, thank you for joining another conversation of Decide Your Destiny. And remember, as always, decide your destiny. Cheers. Okay, awesome. Cool, man.
Excellent. That was a great chat, Kyle.
Yeah, it was really good. Thank you for that.
No problem at all.
I've got to jump off, but I definitely want to. I want to keep chatting with you and keep working together. And I think there's lots.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, there's lots we can help each other. I mean, I've got people, contacts. My mind's going crazy, so
definitely
we'll keep in contact. But yeah, appreciate it, brother.
No worries, man. We will chat again soon.
Cheers, man, and have a good day. Good night.
You too. You too, bud.
Yeah. Cheers, buddy. Bye.
Bye.